Good news on the forefront. Federal judge rejects state request to pause foster care lawsuit. U.S. District Judge Joseph Goodwin rejected a request by the state of West Virginia to pause a long-running, sweeping class action lawsuit aimed at reforming its overburdened foster care system. State's Attorney General J.B. McCuskey's office had filed a motion to stay the proceedings while seeking a review from the U.S. Supreme Court. However, Judge Goodwin ruled that further delays would risk continued harm to vulnerable youth. The key details of the ruling: denial of the stay. Judge Goodwin issued a 13-page order declaring that the lawsuit, which was first filed in 2019, had already been heavily mired in delays and cannot be stalled any further based on guesswork regarding potential Supreme Court intervention. Risk of abuses. The judge emphasized the allegations of institutional failure and constitutional violations are extreme, and pursuing the suit would risk further abuses before the court can properly consider the claims. The legal tug-of-war. Judge Goodwin originally dismissed the lawsuit in early 2025, stating that federal courts do not have the jurisdiction to take over state-run agencies. However, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed his dismissal, ruling the federal courts have a duty to intervene when systematic constitutional violations occur. I knew that. That's why we have the law of the land, the U.S. Constitution. That goes for everybody. And you do something that violates that, that's when the states do something that violates, the U.S. Constitution. That's where the federal court steps in. And they stepped in because there was a long train of usurpations in the child care system. However, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals reverses the dismissal, ruling that federal courts can have a duty to intervene when systematic constitutional violations occur. That's the way the law works, folks. When your state is failing you, that's when the federal government steps in and puts a foot in their ass. Key core issues in the lawsuit. The class action lawsuit was originally brought by the child advocacy group A Better Childhood on behalf of thousands of foster children in West Virginia, the suit alleges. And you can click on this link here and it'll take you there. Pervasive shortages of child protective services workers and high employee turnover. A lack of safe foster homes, forcing children to stay in abusive group homes or institutional settings. Failing to provide adequate support services, leaving children to linger in the state system for years without permanent home plan. With the motion to stay officially denied, the case is now allowed to move forward towards a trial in federal district court. Okay, I've helped out some people with child care or child custody, but I've only battled with parents. And what the parents didn't understand, I wasn't advocating for them, I was advocating for the children. It never came down to it, but the lawyers and the judge always knew that I was pushing for the child to have counsel. Here it is. This is the key element in the case. The child. Okay, and it's easy to get the truth from a child, as well as it easy is to install lies. But when the child has an advocate working directly for them, then the child's voice is better able to be heard on what's best for the child. So I've helped people, and a gentleman one day had him file for an appearance, and when he showed the court, the judge was upset because he didn't have a lawyer. Told the judge, lawyer will be ineffective at this point. And the judge said, I think you need to get a lawyer. And he says, I have a right to be heard. The judge said, why? It's in the Code of Judicial Conduct, and it's a constitutional right to be heard in a court of law by the defendant and or his lawyer if they are represented. So the judge allowed him, and he handed him a file with certified, notarized affidavits from school teachers, principal, doctors, reputable people saying that father had custody of his child for years, and they didn't know who the mother was. So they stopped the wage garnishment, didn't take his kid away, and he was on the verge of being homeless and living in a car with his son. He actually had physical custody of his son for years, and his ex got pregnant and applied for medical from the state. He wound up getting hit for a pregnancy for a child that wasn't his. But either way, I've always advocated. I've met foster kids when I was growing up, and things haven't changed. You know, they haven't changed for them. They turned some of these, I was just a kid, and these were, to me, good kids. It's just that they were put in compromising situations, and that meant living with people who didn't even want them there, and that were only in it for the money. I didn't use that money to help the child. But either way, great news for foster kids. I mean, some kids, you can't send them back to where they were, or something happens to the parents and they have no family to go to. Told myself, if I ever got married, this is what I would do, open a foster home. Great news for foster kids. Finally get recognized. And I said, I've always been a strong advocate for some reason, they'll take a child from a family or a livable situation without probable cause, on assumption somebody might have made. Somebody pointed a finger, an angry relative, an angry ex-spouse, or ex-something or another. And without any probable cause, they'll send a state agency out there and take your kid away and run an investigation, and the only way you can get your child back is with a lawyer. Without proof. Presumption of innocence, people, is mandatory in a court of law, but that doesn't exist. The presumption of guilt always prevails. So you must bring up that simple point, the presumption of innocence. And remember, in every court, there's supposed to be evidence. Look up the preponderance of evidence. Okay, these are mandatories. They can't just go in there and say, well, this lady talked to these people, looked around, and, after 5 minutes, she decided that we're going to take this kid away. And the guardian had lied them. Now, what are their qualifications? I mean, what's the job description? I mean, are these people clinical psychologists? Have they worked with children? Or they just hire them and say, hey, your job is to take these kids away from these people. Good people or not, just take them away. I met a lot of foster kids. I met quite a few that are parents, and they make great parents. They have. They will die before they let anything happen to that child that they went through. You wouldn't believe how happy I've seen some of them with their children. Riding bikes, swimming, playing toys with the kids. Things they didn't get to do because they grew up in the foster care system. So when they have kids, they have a tendency of living the youth they never had. Not reliving, living the youth they never had through their children. And I've watched them do everything and anything possible to make sure that child stays a child as long as possible. You know, people like that realize, you know, once you get grown, there ain't no going back. The only way back is when you have kids and live your youth or relive your youth through them. Foster kids, they go through hell, people. It's about time something's happening. May your Creator always be with you and many blessings. I wish you a long life and good health. Peace be with you.